Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm here today with another EA conference conversation with Rav Chahal. And, you have been with us since the very beginning of the association, one of the core teaching team, and also with us in the very first EA online conference. And as we're preparing for the second conference, which begins just, in a few like days here, really. We're in between eclipse seasons. Um, your topic, I think, is one of the most interesting and probably sort of lesser explored aspects of evolutionary astrology. And so I wanted to come together just to talk about what it means to you. And, I thought we'd start by just diving into where this came from and why you chose this particular topic.
Great question because I personally did not choose this topic. This is what makes me laugh as well. Essentially, when Kristen had reached out about we're doing another conference, I'm like, oh great, what is it you'd like to talk about? And I had written back with, you know what, I have a very strong 12th house. I have a Neptune skip step. So I want to do Pisces and Neptune, something to do with Pisces and Neptune. So we were back and forth, and Rad figured out that I was getting confused, Neptune, disillusionment.
Mhm.
So Rad came up with the topic karma, yoga, and soul's right work.
Mm,
And I actually realized the minute I got the topic, he's looked at my chart and gone, right, this is what she needs to talk about because essentially this is what I need to recover in this lifetime.
mhm.
So this is how this topic came about because, you're right, karma yoga and the soul's right work hasn't been very explored in EA. I know it's been touched upon. I've seen it in the glossaries, I've seen it in the forum chats, and it's something that has always interested me, but I've kind of shied away from it because it's deep work and you
Mm,
have to uncover layers. Like karma yoga, just the word of karma can get people a bit confused.
mm,
And so within this lecture, I am going to be diving further into what karma yoga is and the difference with right work. And I'm still mapping out the PowerPoint. I know we've got a couple of weeks, a week until, the conference will take place. But I'm taking a very one step at a time approach with the PowerPoint and what I want to teach. Of course, I'll be diving further into the Earth Trinity, which is, you've got the Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn archetype, and how those elements in the birth chart can show us our social purpose. The work that we're here to do and how we will achieve that work. But I also want to kind of look further into going back to, the Pluto paradigm, because we have to look at the Pluto paradigm first and foremost.
mm,
Why the soul's choosing this particular incarnation, what it's looking to, what its desire nature is, will essentially link to what work it will end up doing. If you have a third stage consensus individual whose, desire is to be a CEO of a company, their right work is going to be something linked to status, a lawyer or a head of a big corporation. And that's right for them. But if
mm,
someone's here wanting to get to know God deeper, what is God? What is life? What is source? Their work's going to be nothing related to having a status in a corporation. It's going to be, maybe traveling to different lands, getting to know different origins of what source or God or energy is. And so it's going to differ for a lot of people depending on the evolutionary desire. So I'll just be breaking that down a little bit more. And yeah, and just showing people that even we can look at the transits right now. We've got Uranus and Taurus, we've got Pluto and Capricorn right now. That essentially links to our social purpose
mm.
and that's going to be transiting somewhere for us. And just showing people that right work is often just what's right for right now.
Yeah.
It works right now. It links to our survival. Of course it does. We live on Earth. We need money to survive, without it, we can't do anything. So it's not getting sort of hung up on there's only one right work. It will evolve. It needs to evolve. As we evolve, the work will evolve. And karma yoga. as much as it is a very confusing term as well, but karma yoga essentially is very much linking to the inner Godhead,
Mm.
linking to the divine within and essentially coming from a place of love. So doing something from the perspective of love rather than the money, the status, or this is what I want, so I'll do this job just to get an XYZ result. Where the basis is, I am enjoying this, I love this, so I will do it from that perspective.
Mm.
So I'm going to be diving further into this topic, looking at those particular examples. So yeah, and we spoke just before we started recording, Michelle. This very much is resolving my own skip step. I have a very strong Virgo in my chart. My moon is in Capricorn. I have Mars in Cancer in my 10th house.
Mm.
So in
Oh,
terms of, yeah, in
yeah,
terms of
Mars
social,
return.
sorry,
You're having a Mars return too.
I am having a Mars return before it goes retrograde. Yes. Actually, it will go retrograde to that exact point in my 10th house. So I can see a lot of changes in my own environment in terms of the work I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and where I'm aligning it to. And even in my own transits, I can see there's been a lot of uncovering through doing this PowerPoint, actually through preparing for the conference. A
Mhm.
lot's been coming up for me in terms of helping others, but it's that mirror. It's helping me. It's helping me evolve, me untying the knots of my own skip step, as we spoke about earlier. So yeah, I'm excited, also very nervous, as I
Yeah.
always am.
Well, I think it's really a beautiful thing, even hearing your story, the there are many people who have come to me for sessions and for readings, wanting to know their calling or their
Mm,
purpose in the world. And the distinction of karma yoga, in a way, I think is very similar to the way a calling is not necessarily something that we are choosing for ourselves, but it's often something
mm,
that's given to us or a responsibility that requires a humility of our sort of learning process, right? Like
mm,
parenting, I would say, is a karma yoga in a many
mm.
ways. And I have North Node in the 12th house, South Node in the 6th house in Capricorn with Venus. And so I'm very much and I have a skip step of Saturn to those nodes. So I feel like it's also a very familiar path for me. And in my own evolutionary journey, I've I wanted so much in the first stage of my life when I was in a more um, maybe consensus to individuated mindset to really become successful and not necessarily for myself. I think it felt at that time like I have to do work that is something that will receive the approval of others or the Saturn authority figure, something that my father would approve of. And as I've gone through this journey of undoing around my work and service, I think it's more evolved into a deep desire to know what God's will is for me and to live that through the work that I do. And so at thus I've seen more, this whole dynamic of being kind of given what you are to do
Yeah,
and just surrendering to that and saying yes to that and embracing that as the calling of your life at this time. And I do think it evolves. When I was a financial advisor, there was a very strong calling to grow and develop and, become an independent advisor. And then like I wanted to join with a more progressive, environmentally, socially conscious,
mm,
investment firm, right? And then at some point there became a disillusionment with the entire investment industry, with the way that money was being managed by the firm, with the ways that investments were available to people. And I came to a realization of like, I can't do this work anymore,
mm,
even though I was good at it. And so then I went through
yeah,
a period of dissolving and, you know, and that's when astrology really came into my life and I became pretty much obsessed with studying EA in particular. And then my primary teacher, the apprenticeship that I did, EA teachers, and then I, later on had a partnership, my partnership with Arimosha, which had, and that brought me into this calling around the association, which was really like just a desire to support the School of EA and the teachers who are called to carry this lineage.
Mm.
And even in opening myself to that, we've received, requests and things that have brought me deeper into that calling where I find that it more and more is just becoming this devotional service. I'm like the administrator, I do all the things behind the scenes, I handle all the widgets and moderate, but it's because of this inner calling, this knowing that
Yeah.
this work serves, it's only served to deepen my own devotion to God and my own connection to the divine, my that 12th house piece. And I find it fascinating that you wanted to do that piece. I didn't know that. And
Yeah, but
that
it's
the
interesting.
polarity point is actually addressing those very core Virgo dynamics. And in a
Yeah.
way, you've answered the call. So I'm curious to hear from you more of like how you even came to EA and what this journey has been
Mm.
like.
Well, interestingly, because I also have South Node 6th house, North Node 12th house, but
Mm,
my North Node's Virgo and my South Node is Pisces. It's very much similar to yours, Michelle. Actually, I didn't even know this, but because I came to EA through being made redundant from a corporate job, paid
mm,
very well. Um, and if I think back to my life in terms of the work I've done, the careers I've gone into, it it kind of just I just went with it. There wasn't really a desire that I want to be like a CEO. That was never there. It was just, I want to do well in whatever I do. That's my Virgo perfectionism and, just being the best at whatever I do, just doing my best. And so EA came about to me when there was a personal turmoil in my life, professionally and personally. It all happened at once. And it was during my Saturn return. So, as for most of us, where it's like Saturn going, right, enough's enough, here's your work, do it. And EA came about, the book just jumped out, the
mm,
book, Pluto jumped out to me. And I just remember reading it and thinking, this just makes sense. Just the way Jeffrey has written those books, there's no words that are wasted, right to the point. And I just remember having a reading with Deva, and
mm,
and I recall at the time, and this is interesting because she had said something that didn't make sense to me then, it makes sense to me now. She says something about working with women, Mars in Cancer in the 10th house, right? And I remember my first instinct was, not feeling like I want to work with women, I want to work with humans. But, I didn't understand the whole patriarchal, matriarchal until I got into EA and understood the whole dynamics, distortions in history, etc. It's only this year, whilst I've got transits, where I've realized I actually want to do a lot more work with the divine feminine, but for men and women. And that's opening up for me more right now. And so coming to EA, it was more of oh, wow, I found a system that makes sense. And I've always wanted to help people. I've done a coaching diploma. So I was coaching people before I became an evolutionary astrologer. I just found the missing piece, like a soul coach. So astrology is like that missing jigsaw piece for me where, I get to work with clients and help them just, work out, answer questions right now, any confusions that they're going through to validate their experience in life. It's not to like always give them answers. It's kind of to show them there's a reason this has happened. You're here right now. And this is the potential that you can head towards should you choose to want to evolve. Because we have a choice. Clients can come to you, get the answers they want, and then, if things start working out, and I say working out, people will get back to that normal routine. It's usually when we hit an obstacle, where we think this isn't what I wanted. Why is life happening this way? That we dive further into our soul work, I would say. We go deeper. And that's when it's trying to connect us to something higher than what we think we know,
yeah.
which is God's source energy. And ultimately, we're all heading back that way. We're trying to evolve more towards that oneness. So yeah, my journey to EAs. still growing, like you mentioned. I was very fortunate. I'm going to use the word fortunate. That I had just literally been involved for about a year when you decided that you wanted to do the association and stuff, and being asked was an honor.
Okay, everyone, sorry for the little Mercury interruption. Oh, it reminds me too, one of the things we were talking about just before we began is that we're in this particular time period just today of Mercury trine Pluto, or Mercury and the Sun in Virgo trining Pluto. Mercury will take probably a few more days to get to
Mm,
the trine to Pluto. But, from an astrological perspective, this very dynamic, this trine between the Sun in Virgo and the energy of Pluto in Capricorn, which is, we're concluding a very long standing evolutionary cycle with Pluto and Capricorn. And this trine is the very last one. It's like it's a last quarter trine. That's funny.
yeah, yeah,
Because it will never happen again in this way. And the sun in the natal chart, often reflects the soul's purpose, right? A sense of our solar purpose, which I found it interesting when you shared with me that your name actually means the goddess of the sun or the sun god.
yeah, yeah.
Then we have Pluto from an evolutionary perspective, who reflects the core desires of the soul. And at the same time, we are wrapping up a cycle of the nodes in the sign of Aries and Libra. And we're getting ready for a movement where the South Node will be moving into the sign of Virgo and the North Node in Pisces. So I wonder, if there are things that I find this really fascinating from an evolutionary perspective. And I could see the threads in the earlier part of our conversation relative to how we evolve in the knowing of our purpose, or in the knowing of what the soul's right work is. And I imagine in the talk you're going to be outlining from an EA perspective how to identify that in the chart, how to look at it. But like every chart can be seen at multiple stages of evolution, I think in a certain sense we are also constantly in this evolutionary purpose process that allows us to meet where we are. Like, this is the calling of where you are right now. And I wonder if there's anything you want to share about that, what you've been recognizing.
No, that's actually beautifully put, Michelle, because you're right. Once the nodes do move into that Virgo Pisces archetype, we know it's a transitional archetype. Virgo is very much about service,
Hmm.
work, essentially. And for everybody collectively and individually, we're going to be moving into a period where, a lot of shift is happening. We can feel it collectively. It's like consciousness is evolving forwards. And I feel like people can feel it within their bones, something shifting. And it's consciousness that's evolving. And what I mean is people are becoming more conscious rather than reacting to life unconsciously. There's a more of a conscious feeling. And I feel this transit will be just offering opportunities to do the work, the
Hmm.
Virgo archetype. The Pisces, with the North Node going to be in Pisces, it's going to be very much to do with surrendering and faith. It's like there's an opportunity to trust in a higher power that's coming up for everybody. And that can be scary. We're creatures of habit and security. We want to know. Nobody wants to go into the unknown. But it's going back to our core roots where, there was a time in civilization where, we all lived from a perspective of trust and faith and trust in the divine. And that's very much opening up. And yeah, I am going to touch upon the transits because we're here right now for a particular reason. Every single one of us, whoever will be, listening to this talk or even the Karma Yoga talk now or in the future, because you'll be able to purchase it in future as well and download it. It's very much going to be a signal to something they need to know at that particular time.
Hmm.
And you mentioned it earlier, this is very much playing out in terms of my own life and in terms of how I'm moving forward as a teacher, in terms of what I'm teaching. what message I want to share and what message my soul wants to share, actually, more than the ego. The ego will be happy to be behind the scenes and just being quiet and, people working with clients behind the scenes and not having to be, at the center of attention. And my Mars in the 10th house won't allow me to do that. And, I'm working with that slowly. But yeah, you're right about how we have to we have to make the conscious choice to want to move with these energies, and everything is but a choice. And it's a conscious choice. If we react unconsciously to events, we experience the negative of the energies. Frustration and victimhood. With Virgo, it's very much victimhood. Why is
Mm,
this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? It's changing the lens of it. And it's been my journey, very much so, especially with the Virgo archetype, changing that perspective and looking at it more from a divine lens. And that's very much what I'm stepping into personally. And I'm hoping to provide that insight in the lecture as well for people, especially when it comes to it's like we said, karma yoga is very difficult to you can't really figure out karma in a birth chart. You can't. Everybody's story is different, not one size fits all. And we can only work with individual clients that tell us what they want to tell us. You can see a lot in the birth chart, Michelle. I'm sure you've seen that with your clients,
yeah.
but you work with what the client wants to know and what they're willing to hear. So it's very much, the boundaries that you have with, Saturn and Capricorn has to be respected. And as the world evolves forwards and as we move to the last stages of this Pluto retrograde transit before it goes direct, only for 5 weeks, we have a 5 week window of the direct motion of Pluto in Capricorn. And I think that 5 week window will be, a lot of people making a lot of shifts, I hope, evolving towards that Pluto in Aquarius, which is going to be about liberate, decondition, and let's, move towards a future where it's revolutionary, but in a positive sense,
Mm.
and not to move backwards in life, but let's move forwards, you know.
Well, I think you're pointing to a really important piece, especially in the current transits. I'm most fascinated of all things with the shift, with the final conjunctions of Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, with the
Mm,
transition of the nodes into Pisces, no, Virgo, and
mm,
then the subsequent following next year where there will both Saturn and Neptune will both move into Aries. So we have this sort of flip-flop of the energy, and the way I've been tracking it, to kind of circle it back to what you were saying about the divine feminine, um, earlier in this year I received an inner calling, an inner sense that I was to go to the grotto of Mary Magdalene in the south of France. And it came through a dream, and then also just through this clarity that this was what I was called to do for my 42nd birthday. And there's a story or a legend that Mary Magdalene also did this particular journey on her 42nd birthday. So it
mm.
felt very significant. And when I took that journey, in my natal chart, um, my solar return changed for France was like Mars on the ascendant, to Mars in Capricorn. It was such a powerful initiation.
Yeah.
And both listening, to kind of the divine calling, and I don't know where this will take me in terms of my work or what I'm
Mm,
doing, but I've had that with astrology since the beginning, the calling to tune into the goddesses and to the feminine, and to bring forward um, an evolutionary desire for their voices to be expressed. I mentioned this in my talk with Jordan just the other day too, because I think she also is in that frame where she's hearing the calling to progress the feminine voice. So I go to France, take my whole family, my two toddlers and Ari, and it's a grueling trip of jet lag and trains and planes and miraculous events, but also it had this very Virgo quality of like the only way to do this kind of pilgrimage was to be in humble service to what is unfolding, what is. And I feel the same deep inner calling to return. And so I've been a part of this community of, um, women on Facebook, and mostly women. I think there are probably men there in the community, but um, who are following her sacred pilgrimages and listening to her, and all of that. And to me, that is the Virgo Pisces thing. It's literally like listening to the divine calling, not knowing, but literally have to doing the work, and the monks who live there in France, these Dominican brothers, um, they they have they wake up every morning, they chant, they live in very simple accommodations. It's monastic in the same way, like in a Buddhist temple or in an ashram, you live very simply. Although in France, I tell you, they just serve dessert and espresso at the monk meal with wine. So it's a good deal if you're going to go there, stay at the hostel that's run by the monastery. Um, but following this whole journey and listening to this call, and I don't know what it is that how I'm called to serve, but I know that I'm called to respond to that. Um, anyway, what was the other thing? I feel like a part of what you said about deconditioning, a
Mm,
part of what that calling is doing for us, for those who are finding this, in their own lives in some way, shape, or form, is that, like, for example, with Mary Magdalene, we are having to decondition all these patriarchal distortions of the
yeah.
feminine, where, she was declared a whore and
Mm,
but in the gospel, in the actual biblical context, she was of a beloved role to Jesus. And she was the first to witness his resurrection. So there's this miraculous quality to the feminine being present to something and aware of something,
mm,
and how we've grown, Virgo patriarchal stories that have diminished the true holiness of these women. And it has happened in many ways, I'm sure. But that is a part of the reclamation, I think, that's happening in this time, where people are really recovering this awareness inside themselves of their own divinity, of their own calling, and where people are actually having to relearn stories from the past, right? I think of Pisces as relating to the past, and
mm,
Virgo, like, Pisces is Jesus or the divine, universal love. And Virgo is the church, right? And there's this dichotomy between the two because they seem to be polar opposites of one another. One seems to reflect a very deeply repressed, where the learning is through guilt, you know,
yeah.
service, and yet what we are learning in relationship to having a different relationship to our divine calling is that, yeah, sometimes it's hard work. There are things that we do with unconditional love, like parenting is a great example of that. We,
Mm,
if we're really serving the evolution of our children and the calling to be a parent, it's not easy. It's grueling 24-hour a day with six housework, right? Changing diapers and cleaning up and constantly having to serve with maybe not a lot of support in our culture. But I
mm,
think with Pluto also entering Aquarius, we're having to move into a different level of consciousness of all these things. So whether it's religion or your work, your relationship to the divine, what you do with your time or your energy, all
mm,
the ways in which we care. Like, I think you have Mars and Cancer, that is about caring, and there is a
mm,
social activism quality that is about deep care. um, but at the same time, that can lead to burnout if we're not balanced, right? That energy, it's like
yes.
emotional overwhelm. um,
Yes.
so I don't
And
know if
yeah,
you want to share about that.
well, yeah, because even, preparing for this conference, I'm doing the PowerPoints and my notes and stuff. And it was just even today, and I mentioned this earlier, there was a bit of overwhelm coming in. I had to slow down and be like, just process what you're writing. And I
Mm.
have a Mercury Jupiter new phase, and I know the information will come. I just have to have faith, 12th house, and surrender that the message will be shared and trust in the ability to share that message and it will come through. And yeah, that overwhelm is also just it's figuring out is it the guilt that's setting in, because the Virgo archetype is man-made guilt. It's learned guilt that is patriarchal in context. And then it's about working through that and knowing that's man-made guilt. I don't need to carry that. And I will drop that and I'll do that one step at approach, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, and the path will unfold. That's that whole Pisces element coming in. And you're completely right. And just going back to the whole Mary Magdalene, I so resonate with what you're saying. And did you know that you can actually find the asteroid Magdalene in the birth chart?
Oh, I should look at that.
Yes, it's I believe it's 318. And I'm gonna do guess where mine is.
In
I
Virgo.
the, well, no, though Magdalene does relate to Virgo because she was the high priestess of Isis, the
Hmm.
Egyptian high priestess of Isis. She has that lineage. Mine is exactly to the degree conjunct my Mars in the 10th house in Cancer.
Wow. Oh, I just got
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah. So this year it's been a more of a this is what you're here to do. So
Mm.
it's kind of slowed me down a little bit, Capricorn, just to figure things out. Be like, okay. And all I've said to the universe is, show me the way, show me the path, open those doors, and I will walk towards those doors. So I've been doing a lot of research in the background and going deeper into the Magdalene mysteries. The amount that she's connected to England is I never knew about. I knew about France, and but there's a lot of energies in the UK and even going right the way back to Egypt. So I'm doing a lot of research to do with that. And even when clients are now coming to me, I am paying attention to where is their Magdalene for myself to
Mm.
see if there's anything pulling them towards, the divine feminine for men and women. Because we have to remember it's not just about the women, it's the feminine within all of us that is just trying to reawaken. And it's, yeah, that Virgo Pisces nodes, I feel it's just going to make it more into people's consciousness, more about doing the work and welcoming in um whatever message wants to come in, especially through the Pisces Virgo. As we do transition out this Piscean age, I know people are like we're in the Aquarian age and stuff. I still feel we're still closing that cycle to welcome in the Aquarian age. And yeah, and I feel EA is the way to do it, to way to explore your Pluto soul journey, your purpose, what we're here to achieve. And we have to remember, Michelle, this is but a chapter in our soul journey, right? So we're just adding to, the soul's journey onwards and upwards. But yeah, no, it's been a powerful year in a lot of ways. And even with this conference, I'm hoping it opens doors for a lot of people just to explore that karma yoga within themselves and the right work. And like you said, work can be anything that's linked to a divine nature. Like you said, mothering. It is a job. It is. It's and hands up to all you mothers out there. I've babysat my nieces and nephews and gone, okay, great, I can hand you back. But yeah, but we all have different desires. And I have a moon in Capricorn, you
Mm.
know, and I do feel I've probably done it so many times in previous lifetimes. In this lifetime, it was more like you can have a break,
Yeah.
on something else.
That's the second time this in the last 2 weeks that I've heard a moon in Capricorn say that about having babies.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's fifth house for me. Mine's in the fifth house. Can you believe that?
yeah.
So traditionally, traditional astrologers would read it like, oh, you're going to have a child later on in life.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
family.
And I'm like, no, I'm 45. I don't think so.
Oh, the other one who was like that, she ended up having a lot of cats, but she had very strong callings around other things. And
Mm,
in particular, what I learned from that, when I saw that packed fifth house, we tend to think that that translates into
mm,
children, but it's also creative actualization.
mm. Yeah.
And of course, the work that you're doing, the moon in particular, Capricorn moon,
Yeah.
And how you got to this work, right? Leaving corporate, Capricorn,
Yeah.
moon, to
Yeah.
come into a place of serving in the sixth house where you're actualizing, you know, you're teaching what you're here to learn.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't necessarily mean you do that through teaching little children or you do that through
Yeah.
having a big family. In fact,
Yes.
like you can be attending in a big way to many souls. You have a lot more freedom in that respect to actually serve your soul's calling
Mm.
via that choice Saturn to abstain, right? We always have a choice
Mm.
from those responsibilities, but that gives you actually a different responsibility. I find that
Yeah.
the people who choose not, especially with that Mars and Cancer,
Yeah.
that just re-emphasizes um, the core calling of your soul to actualize a higher purpose
Mm.
that helps people to evolve emotional through we evolve through the emotional body. I say
The
this all
body.
the time.
Mm.
And one of the talks that you did for us was on that evolution through the
Ocean.
emotional body,
Yeah.
which I feel is just so perfect. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And I love the way you have really embraced how you've been called to this particular talk.
Mm.
So for those of you who are watching who haven't decided yet to join the conference, you can register for the entire conference. You can use the code RAV10 to take 10% off of the full conference pass. Um, if you just want to attend this talk alone or any of the individual lectures, all of the individual lectures are available for registration. And there's a link below to your talk and to the website where you can find all of the lectures. We begin very soon, Thursday, October 3rd. It's 4 days of talks. From a Virgo perspective, a lot of information, but one doesn't become overwhelmed by that because you basically get lifetime access to all of the talks if you do the full lecture pass. So you don't have to be there live. You can listen to them at your leisure. You can re-listen to them. And I think one of the beauties of your talk and on most all of the talks that are available is that it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner in evolutionary astrology and you're just learning this stuff, or whether you're an advanced practitioner and you're wanting to really just deepen and also be a part of a community of people who are all learning together. Each of these talks is accessible at any level, really. And, we will hear and absorb and take in what we're available to at our level of evolution, just like you were saying with sessions and when clients come to you. And I'm so looking forward to what you're bringing forward in this because for me, the sixth house axis and the Virgo Pisces axis is such a core part of our evolution, being that it's a mutable sign, being that it's that changing nature of the inner dynamic of the soul and the outer, you know, divine source that we have a relationship to, which is also an inner source, right? So that's part of that call and response. And I absolutely love that you're also following the Magdalene.
Yeah.
You a lot like her, you have that with your
I
hair.
have.
Um,
Well, yeah, that's true.
ability, that you're speaking to of I'll just listen and follow where I'm called to go is exactly the spirit with which she followed, Yeshua and her own calling later on in life. Like she lived this monastic life in a cave in the south of France, they say,
Yeah.
for the rest of her life. And one last thing I'll close with, just a few weeks ago, on the very same day, two of my students, friends who led me on this pilgrimage back in February, they both sent photographs of a chapel devoted to Mary Magdalene in different parts of France, not that I had attended, not that we had gone to, but not knowing that either one had sent the image to me on the same day. It was like the most synchronistic, amazing experience. And that's kind of the way the divine works I think, through people, is that we're each following our calling. They're both on their own soul's journey relative to their path. And then at the same day, in the same moment, they both send me a picture of them in a chapel devoted to Mary Magdalene in a
Yeah.
completely different parts of the country. And I
Wow.
just feel like that, that's what teaches me to trust, to have faith in the process, that I don't have to know how it all works, right? From a Virgo perspective, I can just
Yeah.
give myself to the path, as you were saying, and let it unfold for me. So, so grateful to have this time with
Thank you,
you. Is there
Michelle.
anything else you want to say before we conclude our conversation today?
No, you've got me excited about the conference now. But no, I'm looking forward to connecting with whoever joins, and if you listen to this in the future as well, or download any of the conference talks, yeah, there's a wonderful forum, JWGEA .org. Come and connect with all of us, and yeah, thank you for today, Michelle. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.